1980s saw a British comedy called Yes Minister. The basic premise behind the programme was that it's really the civil service that run the country and the politicians are just a figurehead. In one of the early episodes, the civil servant was explaining to his minister what he does to run the country, and the minister asked, what am I supposed to do? Rather befuddled, the civil servant looked at the minister and said, well, you don't actually have to do anything. People just have to believe that you are doing something. The series went on around this theme. Quite hilarious results. And think what you want about politicians. But there's a lot of things in life that are based on perceptions. Usually by what's going on around us or what we watch on television. We can question some of these to bring ourselves back to reality, see if it's really true. And I want to cover a few examples of this. The weather in Southern California is quite moderate, but there are periods of extreme heat, and in the what's otherwise known as the winter, the rainy season, of course it rains, and it's during these periods of heat that after a few days someone's going to exclaim, this must be the hottest summer ever. Or in the winter, after a few days of rain, someone's bound to remark, this must be the wettest winter ever. Well, you can always look at statistics to see if this is really true. Records are being kept of the weather for at least 100 years. Quite often the weather stations traditionally were at airfields, which led the comedian Dave Berry to remark, that's all well and good, but very few people actually live at airports. But of course, as weather measuring equipment has gone down in price and the need for more accurate weather forecasting, weather stations are more widely spread, so we can actually check up on statistics in our immediate neighbourhood. But that means that we can quickly dispel these perceptions of the extremes of weather. Occasionally, of course, it's true, records are set, but for the most part, it's not true. With the current economic situation, of course, we're bombarded with statistics all the time on the state of the economy, the rate of unemployment, the rate of inflation, etc., etc. But even their perceptions can be skewed dependent on our immediate circumstances. We don't really care that unemployment is at 10%. If most of the members of our immediate family are unemployed, we of course believe it to be higher. And for the unemployed themselves, even 10% is a meaningless figure, because if you're unemployed, you are 100% unemployed. Other figures, of course, report on consumer confidence, which is also an interesting way of measuring the economy. And it is rather interesting to note that when there is high confidence, people are more likely to go out and spend money, and borrow money, whether directly from a bank, using their credit card, or some other credit scheme offered by the stores, especially when it comes to the major purchases such as cars, refrigerators, etc. It is of course this influx of money into the economy then that gives other people jobs, which keeps the economy rolling along. If we perceive the economy to be in a bad state and we might be losing our jobs in the near future, of course people hang on to whatever little money they have just as a cushion against what might come, so that they can pay for the necessities of life. Again, there's no end of statistics that we can go to and check up on what's going on and help us in our decisions. People who sit and watch a lot of police programs or detective programs on the television will get a very skewed picture of crime in their relevant country. They can always, again, check this up and get the accurate statistics. And that is, of course, one of the great things of the internet now. As the old joke goes, back in the old days we used to walk uphill to the library both ways in the snow if we wanted to check these things out. So we always now have an easy way of checking up on these. The news, just to be news, usually reports bad news. So although we think we're being informed of what's going on, the popular news at least doesn't really give accurate pictures of what's going on. Good news isn't really news anymore as far as ratings go. Not many people want to hear about the nice things of life. It's usually the gruesome murders, abductions, bank robberies, embezzlement, etc. that make the news. One set of statistics that I haven't been able to lay my hands on is what some people are calling revenue enhancement. As we all know, cities are hard pressed for cash now because revenue from sales tax, the various taxes that they impose on property owners, etc., has declined. So cities are having to cut back on the services that they offer or engage in other forms of financial wangling just to keep the public happy and believing that the elected politicians are doing what they were elected to do. But the issue of revenue enhancement that I've heard quite a few people mention is that of the police being overzealous in stopping people for a variety of traffic offences. If anyone can point me to the relevant statistics, I would love to know how this really bears out in practice. It would be nice to think that crime is so way down that the police actually do have time to sit around in quiet side streets and wait for someone not to come to a perfect stop at a crossing. But I have no way of checking on the statistics of that. In fact, in my own experience, it seems that just as many motorists are running red lights and holding cell phones whilst driving as ever there were. Well, that's just a few examples of perceptions that we might be surrounded with, perceptions that, if not verified, can not only skew the way we look at things, but we may also fall party to joining in and agreeing with everyone that yes, this is the hottest summer ever. Well, it's so easy to go and check it, and so that's my general advice to people. But also there's another great website, because just as before rumours could be spread from one person to another, these days with email there's always someone passing on the latest alert. Don't put your fingers in the coin slot of the public telephone to retrieve coins, because knives have been put there, etc, etc. Fortunately there are people who check these things out, and the majority of the time you find these not to be true. So let's not be deceived by perceptions. Let's do what we can to be factual. Check up on for ourselves what's going on. We don't have to be super geniuses. We don't have to put other people down by snapping back some smart reply. But we can bring some measure of normalcy to the conversation, and it makes it all the more interesting as well, because anything factual is much better than perception.